Substack. Are you interested in the Scottish witch hunts? Do you struggle to understand how thousands of women were legally murdered? Are you hopeful that stories can heal? Well, great, because you're in the right spot. I am thrilled to be talking today to Maggi Feehan. Is that how you say your name, by the way?
Feehan, yeah. In Ireland, they'd say it differently.
She's an author, a teacher, a playwright, a psychologist, and she is an expert on the witch hunts in Scotland. Maggi, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Shannon. I want to say that I'm not an expert. I'm a person who's done a deep dive in my own way about the Scottish witch hunts.
Well, yes. And so, and I think that you've done your research has led to books and screenplays and
yeah, very much so.
And your posts on Substack are phenomenal. So
it's such a joy to write on Substack. It's such a joy because it's practicing our craft, as you are, Shannon.
Yeah, and but the way that you tie in the personal stories with the research points, with it's entertaining, informative, and it's phenomenal.
Thank you.
So tell us about so you taught at the university level. And you are a psychotherapist. How did you end up writing The Burning Times? Tell us your journey to this, to get to this place.
Well, I've been a writer for a very long time, and I've been really mildly obsessed with the witch hunts since for about 30 years. Wow. I saw a couple of documentaries that were actually made by a Canadian, and I went very deep with it. At that time, I really explored Wicca through Starhawk, of course. That's not my path in life, but I very much respect it. And it's always been on my mind to write about this. I just needed the time and space in my life, and actually the maturity, the emotional maturity to go into such a dark period of history.
Yeah.
So now is the time.
Yes. And I just want to take 2 seconds to acknowledge Cato. So Cato McNichol is another playwright, amazing person.
Oh, awesome.
And Greg. Yeah. Do you know Greg? Same name.
My brother. Thank you for coming. I love it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. So in your writing, in one of your posts, you talked about how the word witch in these times in the 1600s, in your opinion, really is women we fear.
Yes, very much so. Well, the whole construction of the witch hunts, you have to understand that women were not really practicing witches. Mm. This was a construct, and it came about for a number of different reasons: political instability, war, plague, the introduction of modern medicine, very much because of the schism in religion in Scotland in that time. People were trying to prove how holy they were. Mm. And one of the things I think it's hard for modern people to understand is that the devil or evil was omnipresent in society. People were speaking of the devil all the time. And so people went to church. They were often told, be aware of the devil, be aware of the devil's works. So this was very much in the psyche of all people during this period of time. So it's not a large leap to get to the idea being that the devil is amongst us. And that's where my story starts.
The devil is amongst us. I mean, what a terrible frame and paradigm to view your neighbors.
Well, you have to understand that people weren't very well educated. People were living a very dire life. There was poverty. There had been famine. There had been, previous to that, a mini ice age in the British Isles. There was the rise of authoritative, I'm so sorry, authoritative structures. It's early in the morning for me. And they were very much displacing the feudal system. So there was all sorts of impacts that were really strong in society. And you can imagine in a society that we're living in, very similar, where there's so much change and there's so much disorganization and, quite frankly, a lot of fear, that the witch hunts began to blossom out of that.
I don't know if you know Kenny Boyle, the actor, playwright. I follow him on Instagram, and he had a wonderful post the other day. He said, "Let's get this straight. Witches were not murdered. Women were murdered."
Thank you for saying that, because that's very much true. Yeah. Well, the original researchers in the witch hunt didn't have a feminist perspective on that. Many of the subsequent writers are really giving it that perspective. So if you think of the European witch hunts, 90% of the people killed were women. In Scotland, they think it was about 84%. How could that not be about gender?
Yeah. I mean, truly. And I know that we already talked about this, but I just absolutely love this book.
Love it.
How to Kill a Witch, The Patriarchy's Guide to Silencing Women by Zoe Vendizone and Claire.
Right.
And you have the tartan, right? The witch.
I have the tartan right here. Here we go.
And tell us about that.
This is the tartan that they created to commemorate all the women killed in Scotland. And it's made by traditional means. So these are not mass produced. So I waited a good 6 months before this arrived. And they wanted to be as authentic as possible. So I hold this near and dear. And
so why do you think, like, these two women, Claire and Zoe, are, they've gone to the government, and the government of Scotland has issued an apology and and acknowledgement of the witch trials and the murders. Why now, and why does it matter? And can what we're doing now reach back through time and heal anything?
I think so. That's one of the reasons I'm writing. I mean, people have different perspectives on this, but I'll just tell you my perspective. I think now is a time in history where we're looking at shadow. And we're looking at what really has happened throughout human history. Of course, we don't know everything. We have our perspective now, looking back on the past. But it seems that this story really needs to be told now. It was subverted for a long time. It was hidden for a long time. There was a lot of misconception about it. And it seems to be the time where this story is being told, not just by me, but by literally thousands of people. And I think it's a great reckoning. I think it's a great reckoning to see where we've come from, and therefore to be very clear about what the choices are as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've noticed a lot of people are writing about it. It's coming through in fiction. I see it coming through in fiction. And a woman I know up in Bellingham, she's writing a book about it that's coming out in 2000.
A lot of us are really in this wormhole, to be truthful about it. And I love that. People always ask me, well, aren't you a little worried about that? And I say, are you kidding? Bring it on.
Bring it on.
Bring it on, because it needs to come out in multiple ways through multiple voices. And so I have my particular story that I'm telling, but other stories, and I have bookshelves full of writing on the witch hunts, and everybody has a different perspective. And I think we need to hear every perspective.
So as a psychotherapist, I am very curious. And so we sort of were talking about this in the Zoom room before we started. So I'm very curious about epigenetics and how trauma is stored in our body, and so for example, as an educator, so I was in public schools for 30 years, and the Puyallup tribe, where I live in Tacoma, they have a Western Washington Native American conference every year. So one year I went to this conference, a fellow named Dr. Yellowbird spoke about how people literally carry trauma in their bodies. Mm-hmm. As he's talking, I could feel, like, intuitively and also just in my gut, the clearances of Scotland and the pain and the things that had happened in my line. As somebody who's an empath, I could feel it. And I thought, oh my God, this is fascinating. And then he also talked about what do we do to heal it? And so I just wonder, so I guess I have probably 10 questions for you, but I'll try to get it to. But one, as a psychotherapist, do you have ways for people to help? Do you think it's stored in our body? And do you think that the stories help us to heal? So you say we're looking at the shadow. Is this helping us to heal to a better consciousness, to a better place, to a better. Do you understand my question? I'm not sure I'm saying it okay.
I understand your question. Thank you, Shannon. This is one of my favorite topics right here,
Oh, good.
because it brings my work as a psychotherapist and my work as a writer together. And I absolutely 100% believe that our trauma is stored in our body.
Hmm.
I know it. And I know it because I've worked with so many clients. And some of the processes I use in psychotherapy are EMDR and IFS, internal family systems, which is part work. So I am witness to literally thousands of people who are working out trauma through their bodies. So when I think about that in terms of writing, I think of the intergenerational nature of trauma and how that's been passed down. And there are strong studies now which shows that our DNA is actually changed as a result of trauma. So it's being passed down through our genetic code. Think about that. Think about the DNA. And they've done all sorts of studies in many different ways. And one of the most recent studies that I heard about was that the DNA of men who were abused as children, that's changed their DNA structure. So that intergenerational trauma is going to their children. So it's not just the maternal line, it's also the paternal line. So if you think back in a time of history, like say the 1600s, that I'm writing about, there were whole villages where almost all the women were wiped out. There were one or two women left. There's a famous village in Germany, actually, where there was one woman left. So just think of that. That's your mother, your sister, your aunt, your daughter, your neighbor, all gone. How could that not have a severe impact on you? And as we understand the structure of the DNA and how it's passed on, and also the social, emotional, psychological implications of that kind of abuse, how that then changes our parenting, and then that changes subsequent generations. So this is a very profound experience that we're talking about here.
Yeah, the woman that was sitting next to me at this particular conference. So I don't know if you're aware of the Japanese internment camps that we have.
I absolutely know about them. A lot of them are in Canada as well. Yeah.
In Washington State. She remembered. She talked about her family and what they went through, and it was quite shocking talking to her. But I think what gave me so much hope is that, you know, we have this idea that you carry this trauma, but I feel like we can also do something about it. We can heal it.
Yeah.
We're not stuck with it forever. It's not a burden we have to carry for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, people love talking about intergenerational trauma, but I also like to talk about intergenerational resilience. Like if I think of the lines that we all come from, the maternal and paternal lines, we also have to remember how many of those people were resilient and what they got through, and their strengths and their intelligence and their skills and their resources. They were different than our resources, but they absolutely had them. And so I think focusing just on the trauma of it is missing the point. I think we need to take a systemic look at how many layers of healing and trauma have always coexisted. People got through their lives. People sang, people danced, people shared stories, people laughed. It wasn't all doom and gloom. Our ancestors had very difficult lives, but they found pleasure. They loved, they shared, they were in community. We have to hold all of that simultaneously.
I think that's a really good point, because I think sometimes if we focus just too much on the this is my trauma, there's this idea that, well, that's just it. You're just stuck with it.
Well, I mean, I guess this is why I'm a therapist and not a counselor. I mean, technically, I'm a clinical counselor, because just talking about your trauma does not heal trauma. We know that now. In fact, it can increase the trauma because you're increasing the neural pathways. This is my story and I'm really sticking with it. You see? So what you have to do is you have to expel that trauma. EMDR does that. Internal parts work does that as well.
Yes.
Movement does that. I'm also a conscious movement facilitator. I facilitate Open Floor International. I can tell you that dancing moves it. Yoga moves it. Longtime yoga practitioner. telling stories, being outside. I'm a person who wants to be outside all the time. And I think part of it is just the joy of moving my body, the connection with nature. And that connection with nature found its way into my novel over and over and over again.
Yeah, tell us more about that, the connection with nature.
Well, I had to make some choices. So what happened was I wrote 2 screenplays first.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote The Burning Times, and I wrote one called The Remembering. The Burning Times is purely historical. The Remembering is parts take place in 1662 Scotland, but it's also 3 contemporary women reliving that unknown memory and how the witch hunts have impacted them. So they're very 2 different stories. But one of the things I was really had to make a very strong choice about at the beginning of it was, are these women going to be doing like traditional witchy work? Because we live in a society now where people are thinking that those women were all herbalists, all healers, and that they were killed because of that. Well, from my research, I would say that some of them were, but most of them were just killed because they were women. And a lot of elderly women were killed because they had resources. Say if their husbands had died and they left their land or their little cottage to them, the state or people wanted those resources. Mm-hmm. So these women had to pay for their own imprisonment. I think that's a really important factor to note.
What?
You were arrested.
What?
You were sent to the Privy Council. They had to find evidence against you. It was sent on when you were imprisoned. And I've gone 2 research trips to Scotland. In the Witches' Tower, you had to pay for that. You had to pay for the food and drink of the jailer, probably his tobacco, definitely his alcohol. And so this was also this was an economic experience as well as everything else. Now you have to understand that this is the beginning of capitalism. And a lot of people now are writing about what is the intersection between this period of history and capitalism. That's not my focus, but I find it completely fascinating. Mm-hmm. So what I had to do, and I know there's a lot of people practicing witchcraft and Wicca, and I love that. I'm not one of them because I'm really focused. I guess maybe this is the academic in me, really focused on what really happened. Who were these women? Yeah. And I did choose to have the 2 sisters as herbalists because as a writer, I found that juicy. I found that really interesting. Yeah. And what was really interesting for me is as I researched it, the plants and the trees in Scotland are very similar to where I live right now on Vancouver Island. Mm. And so I walk out into my garden, I'm seeing a lot of the plants that they would have seen. So it was really expansive for me. It was really easy for me to start writing about herbalism. I'm very interested in herbalism as well and learning. I'm very much a beginner, but learning. And so I made the choice that they were herbalists. And that was the practice of witchcraft for which they were accused. So you have to understand, women were not burned because they were witches. They were burned for practicing witchcraft. So the Witchcraft Act was a very detailed, very academic tome. There were 2 huge books. First one in Germany, the Maleficarium. Mm-hmm. Written in Germany, and then King James VI, who became King James I of England, he wrote something called Demonology. Yeah. And that just, again, popularized witchcraft as well. So the Witchcraft Act went from 1563 to 1736. And so that's 173 years where there was an official act against the use of witchcraft, which involved midwifery, herbalism, and all sorts of ludicrous things like we found a lame dog, or Shannon, I walked by Shannon's house and gave her a dirty look and her milk went sour. Yeah. So from it just covered so many bases.
And I think a lot of people, like myself, I didn't understand that it lasted for almost a couple hundred years. And I never knew that Scotland was particularly prolific. And in
per capita, I guess, and Scotland was still very much a small country there,
Yeah.
but per capita, Scotland killed more witches than any other country in the world.
Yeah.
So that's a very interesting thing. So my maternal line goes back to those days.
So when you went to Scotland, because you had talked about in one of your posts that in your maternal line that you had a number of ancestors that were killed.
Yeah.
So when tell us about your trip back to Scotland.
Okay,
part of what I'm trying to get from you is when I have had trips back to Scotland, my ancestors, man, I have had some direct downloads, and it's been quite life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any of those spiritual connections or those moments where you're like, oh, they're with me?
Absolutely.
As you were doing your research? I would love to hear about that.
Yeah. Shannon, that's why I'm just so excited about all of this. Because I feel a really deep connection. And I feel like on some level, somewhere, somehow, I made a contract to write this.
Yeah.
So it's, it's my sacred work. But what's really interesting is I started researching this in 2020. And I went online and was starting to research, and I came across a character, a woman, and her name was Christian Cadell. And she dressed up as the witch pricker, a witch pricker. We'll talk about that, but as a man. And she went around killing women, pricking them to see if they had the devil's mark on them, and called herself John Dixon. And so, just a side note, what a witch pricker was a man who rode into small villages, and his job was to find the devil's mark on women's bodies. And so, what you can do in some of the smaller museums in Scotland is you can actually see some of the witch prickers. So it's both the name of a man and the name of an instrument. And some of them have retractable blades. So if a witch pricker was going and trying to, the blade would go in and it looked like it went in, but actually it's retracted. And so what would happen, and this is in both my novel and my screenplay, is the woman would be just, one, sleep deprived and probably tortured. And she wouldn't feel the blade go in. And so they would say, she feels no pain. She must be in league with the devil. But actually it was a ruse, a very terrible ruse. And so I became fascinated with this woman who would dress up as a man and then go around pricking a woman. I couldn't get over that. I had to go deep on that. So I wrote her into my screenplay. I wrote her into my novel. And on my second research trip to Scotland, a new museum had opened in the area of Fife in the small town called Leven. And I went there, and I was the only one in the museum, very small, like one room. And he asked me what my last name was. Well, my last name is Irish, my father's name, but I remembered where my maternal line had come from. So I said, the MacLeans. And he said, the MacLeans? Yes.
Just got chills, by the way.
And he said, do you happen to know Christian Cadell? And I said, do you mean Tom Dixon? And he said, you know about this person? I said, yes, I do. Then he told me that Christian Cadell, dressed up as the male witch pricker, had killed 17 of my maternal ancestors. And I had no idea. At that point, I'd been writing about this for 5 years.
Wow.
Fascinated with this person, having no idea what the connection was.
And then what do you do with that?
Well, it's interesting as a writer, and you face this a lot. Is this my story to tell? This is my story to tell.
Yeah.
That's when it really hit. Okay, I'm not just fooling around here, going woo woo. I want to know about the witch hunts. This is personal. This is historical. This is familial.
That's incredible. 17 of your ancestors.
Yeah, clearly some lived so that we were here, but there was the MacLean clan. Of course, there were clans all the time. You know this better than I. Mm-hmm. And those MacLeans were killed for whatever reason. I haven't figured out the reason yet, and I'd love to know. well, reason,
Yeah.
it's not really a reason, it's an excuse.
I'm still processing that.
Yeah, I need more water. Thank you. I've told this story before and I still need more water. I know. It's
I just can't even fathom. Well, thank goodness you're writing these stories. So let's talk about those stories.
okay.
Just real quick, we are sitting at 10:25, so we got about five minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. Actually,
Okay.
all these stories. So you have a novel that's coming out and a screenplay. Tell us where you're at with those projects.
Okay. What I did is, and I did it backwards. I wrote the screenplay first, and then I wrote the novel. And I've been working on the screenplay now for 6 years, and it's gone through a number of different rewrites. And I have it at a place where I think it's good to go. Right now, I've been watching The Business, and it's been in a rom-com experience, but it's just starting to shift. So the possibility of selling it is better this year than it was last year, although I'm still not putting it out.
So if there was a producer or somebody listening right now, where would they be able to find you so they could say, hey, Maggie, let's get your story out there?
Well, I'm on Substack under Maggie Feehan. Instagram, although I'm not a very big social media person.
Me either. I always say I'm bad at it. Like I'm on Instagram, but badly.
Oh, I don't even think badly's the term for me. I think there has to be something lower than badly. Well, I won't go into it, but my psychotherapist brain says people do not need any more dopamine hits in their day, and I don't want to add to that, but that's a completely different story. What was your question, Shannon?
So two questions. Just where your current projects are right now, and then where people can. So we've had an incredible conversation. You're so educated and delightful and passionate about this topic. Where could people find out more to hear more from you and these incredible stories?
Well, I'm happy to have people email me, and we could put that into the chat if that was a thing. I love this conversation. So I'll just tell you about my novel. I spent the last 3 years changing the screenplay into a novel. I now have what I think is a solid third draft, and I just sent it out to agents, like literally a couple of months ago. And I've had a couple of people get back to me and said, I love this. I'm not the agent for it, which I respect. It's going to take a very special person. I have a couple other agents just looking at it now as we speak. So fingers crossed that I find the right team. I know this will get published. I just want the right team to come into place and help me with it.
Yeah, because it's a very special, timely
It's a special
topic.
novel. It's not for everyone, for sure. Yeah. I mean, somebody's got to feel as passionate about it as I do.
Yes. And I really think that's true. And I love you have that perspective. I had a novel, I queried maybe 50 people. And I think that to me, sometimes authors are like, oh, I hope they pick me. And I feel like we have to be like, no, I'm freaking picking you.
Exactly.
This is the marriage. And if you don't love it, then if you're not going to champion my work, then I'd rather self-published. And these days we can. So
yeah. Oh no, there's somebody out there that's going to pick this up.
Yes, I think you are correct. So we're coming down to the end of of our time already. It was so fast. It was so fast. But I always ask all my guests to contemplate, what does imagine, believe, discover mean to you?
First of all, Shannon, when I saw your Substack and it was arranged that way with the beautiful graphics, I thought, oh, she's way better at this than I am. But it's interesting because just this last weekend, I was on a family vacation and I went back to reading The Alchemist.
Love that book.
I know. And it actually it's really nicely goes with the way that you the imagine, believe, discover, because I think that's the way of alchemy. But I also think, and believe me, I know it's hard when people start talking about quantum mechanics and don't know what they're talking about, but it is the quantum field of possibility turning into the quantum field of probability. by us deeply believing it, putting our energy and our focus on it, and dreaming up something, deeply believing in it, and then discovering how it manifests in 3D reality. I love that.
Yeah, a phrase that I heard recently from Dr. Janine Williams, to give her a shout out. She said, frequency before form.
Always, because that's how things come into form, is the frequency. We know that.
Yeah.
I've been working on this frequency on the Burning Times a long time, Shannon. It's ready for form.
It is ready for form.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful for you coming on the show, and I absolutely love your work. And I know we have many more conversations in our future. And to visit, because you're my neighbor up north. So
yes, yeah,
we're not too far away from each other. And to our audience, I just want to say, stories change the world. And Maggie, thank you for sharing yours.
Oh, thanks so much, Shannon. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
It has. So I'll put stuff in the show notes, and I'll put links and your email. If you would like that in the show notes, I can put that in there.
Sure. Yeah.
And thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
All right.
Bye for now.
Bye.